In the rugged heart of Mexico, a barrier of stone separated the Atlantic from the Pacific for centuries.
The old road, known as the Devil's Backbone, claimed lives with every curve, taking 6 hours to cross just a few miles. To unite the nation, engineers planned a superhighway, but one massive gorge stood in the way, the Baluarte.
The drop was over 400 meters. Building here seemed impossible to the naked eye. The solution was the Baluarte Bicentennial Bridge, designed to be the highest cable-stayed bridge in the Americas. A consortium of Mexican experts gathered. The logistics alone were a nightmare in this remote terrain. Before construction could begin, they had to cut access roads into cliffs where only mules had walked before. Every piece of equipment, every worker, and every liter of water had to be hauled up these treacherous paths. A temporary city for 1,500 workers was built in the clouds, a home away from home for years to come. February 2008. The planning was over. It was time to break ground on a project that would cost billions. The first task was excavation. To anchor a giant, you must dig deep into the mountain's heart. 447,000 cubic meters of rock were blasted away to create a stable footing for the massive piers.
The dust cleared to reveal the bedrock. This would be the foundation for the highest bridge in the hemisphere.
Men worked in thin air, leveling the stone by hand and machine to ensure a perfect seal. Steel for the foundations arrived. Tons of rebar were trucked in to reinforce the concrete roots. These steel cages would hold the weight of the massive towers against earthquakes and winds. The pits were dug deep. Pier 9 alone would eventually rise 148 meters, but it started underground. The pour began. 90,000 cubic meters of concrete were needed for the entire project. Removing air bubbles was critical. Any weakness in the foundation could spell disaster later. As the concrete cured, the base was set. The bridge was now rooted to the Sierra Madre.
Work began on Pylon 5. It would become the taller of the two main towers at 169 meters.
They used climbing forms, molds that move upward as each layer of concrete hardens. Cranes became lifelines, lifting materials hundreds of feet as the towers grew taller. It takes a special kind of courage to tie steel while suspended over a 400-meter drop. The pylons widen to carry the roadway, then taper toward the sky in a distinct Y shape. Inside, the towers are hollow to save weight, but reinforced to handle the immense tension of the cables. Shifts ran day and night. Sparks flew in the darkness as the deadline approached.
The Baluarte River below looked like a thin ribbon. The drop is higher than the Eiffel Tower.
Finally, the two main towers stood guard on opposite sides of the canyon, ready for the span.
The vertical climb was done. Now came the most dangerous part, crossing the void. The bridge deck would be a mix of steel and concrete, fabricated off-site and brought in pieces. The first steel segments were placed on the pier table, the starting point for the road deck.
Precision bolts locked the steel frame together. This was the skeleton of the highway.
A mobile factory called a traveler was installed at the tip, allowing them to build into thin air. The traveler moves forward as each section is finished, carrying the workers out over the gorge. Steel segments were lifted from the valley floor, dancing in the wind as they rose. Alignment had to be perfect. Millimeters mattered when connecting a structure this size. Welders fused the segments, extending the road further from the safety of the pylon. On top of the steel, a concrete deck was prepared to carry the future traffic. Concrete was poured to form the road surface, locking the steel frame into a solid composite. To hold the weight of the extending deck, 152 steel suspenders were needed. These cables are bundles of high-strength steel, designed to hold thousands of tons. Cables were threaded through the towers and down to the deck, acting like the strings of a harp. Each cable transferred the weight of the bridge back to the massive concrete towers.
Tensioning is an art. Too loose, it sags. Too tight, it snaps. It had to be perfect.
A semi-fan layout provided stability, creating a stunning geometric web against the sky. White pipes encased the steel strands to protect them from the harsh mountain weather. Storms rolled in often. The Mexican crews worked through rain to keep the schedule.
They built outward and backward simultaneously, keeping the tower perfectly balanced.
Looking up, the structure seemed to hang from the sky itself. Week by week, the gap over the Baluarte River shrank. At 403 meters high, the workers were building above the clouds. Another segment done. The traveler moved forward, claiming another 12 meters of space. Surveyors constantly checked the coordinates. The two sides had to meet exactly in the middle. Maintenance crews hung in baskets over the void, checking every bolt. The central span was reaching 520 meters, the longest in North America. The bridge was built to withstand high winds, a necessity in these mountains.
For the workers, this terrifying height was just their office.
As the ends grew closer, the longest and heaviest cables were installed. The moment of truth approached. The gap was now just a few meters wide. The final segment, the keystone, was lifted to close the gap. This was the most critical maneuver, fitting the last piece of the puzzle.
Contact. The two sides of the bridge were finally joined into one continuous structure.
Welders rushed to seal the connection, permanently linking Durango and Sinaloa. Cheers erupted. The impossible gap had been conquered. The last strip of concrete was poured, completing the road deck. The travelers, their job done, were dismantled and lowered to the valley floor. A single, unbroken line now stretched across the Baluarte Gorge. Engineers performed final checks, fine-tuning the cable tension. Expansion joints were installed to allow the bridge to breathe with temperature changes. Rollers compacted the surface, preparing it for the wheels of thousands of vehicles. Now came the asphalt. A smooth black layer was laid over the concrete deck. Lane markings were painted. The bridge was starting to look like a highway. Safety barriers were bolted down. At this height, safety is the only priority. Lights were installed to guide travelers through the misty mountain nights. The deck was swept clean. The construction zone was becoming a world-class bridge.
Before opening, a fleet of heavy trucks drove onto the bridge to test its strength.
Sensors measured the deflection. The bridge held firm, exactly as designed.
Signs pointing to Mazatlan and Durango were erected.
Officials walked the length of the bridge, approving the masterpiece.
January 2012. The Baluarte Bicentennial Bridge was officially inaugurated.
Late 2013, the bridge opened to traffic. The Atlantic and Pacific were linked.
Drivers now glide over the gorge in seconds, where it once took hours of winding roads. From below, it looks like a white thread stitched across the sky.
The journey from Durango to Mazatlan was slashed from 6 hours to 2.5.
Commerce flows freely now. Goods move faster between the coasts.
The 76 cables catch the light of the setting sun, a beautiful cage of steel.
It stands 403 meters above the river, the highest bridge in the Americas. At night, it becomes a beam of light in the dark Sierra Madre. Total length, 1,124 meters. A kilometer of triumph over nature. A central span of 520 meters, suspended without support from below. 90,000 cubic meters of concrete. $12,000 tons of steel.
$447,000 cubic meters of rock moved.
A semi-fan cable system that balances aesthetics with raw strength. 4 lanes wide, 20 meters across, carrying the future of Mexico. Pylons that rise 169 meters, tall enough to house a skyscraper. Built to withstand the seismic activity of a volatile region.
It is the crown jewel of the Durango-Mazatlan Hazeway.
But behind the numbers are the men. 1,500 workers who gave their sweat to this mountain. They battled heat, cold, and isolation.
Mexican engineers who proved they could build world-class infrastructure.
They didn't just build a bridge, they conquered the Sierra Madre.
From a dusty cliffside in 2008 to a modern marvel in 2013.
It entered the record books as the highest cable-stayed bridge in the world at its opening.
Now, it is a landmark, drawing travelers just to see the view.
A structure that floats among the clouds. Its shadow stretches long over the canyon floor, 400 meters below.
Day after day, it stands strong, a silent sentinel of progress.
The Baluarte Bridge is more than concrete and steel. It is a symbol of connection. They battled heat, cold, and isolation. a vital artery for the economy of northern Mexico.
Taming the devil's backbone was no small feat.
But with vision and hard work, the impossible became reality.
The mountains remain wild, but they are no longer a barrier.
Every crossing is a victory for engineering.
To monument to Mexican perseverance.
And a bridge to the future. The Baluarte Bicentennial Bridge.